Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Friday afternoon session of the first virtual Clay Fest and the 12th annual conference. Please have a look at the eBuckeye website or emails sent to you if you have any technical problems or queries, as there's no point sending messages to me because I can't answer them. I'm Sarah Roberts. I'm an architect in East Anglia. I've been interested in earth buildings since finding literally thousands of clay lump or adobe buildings in East Anglia when I moved here 20 years ago. I was on the East Anglia Earth Buildings Group or Eartha Committee for many years, and I've recently been pleased to join the Executive Committee of eBuckeye. The first session this afternoon will be a video presentation from Fiona McKie from Egypt, followed by a live presentation by Ala Imam, also from Egypt. So quick introduction to Fiona before her video. Her interest in earth construction began in the late 70s, working with architect Hassan Fatty's new Gorna village at Luxor within the World Heritage Site of Ancient Thebes. She can't be here at the moment in person, but her contact details are available should you want to follow anything up with her after Clayfest. So enjoy the presentation about her many years of earth building experience in Egypt, and I will see you afterwards to introduce Ala.
Thank you.
Welcome to a talk about building with Kashif in Siwa Oasis. Siwa lies in the western desert of Egypt, 350 kilometers from the nearest coastal town and 75 kilometers from the Libyan border. So it really is way in the desert. For many years, Siwa was very isolated, and they didn't get a road here to the coast till 1986. So up until then, buildings had to be made from materials that were available in the landscape, and what was available was Kashif. Kashif is mined directly from the ground around the salt lakes, and it's basically an amalgam of rock salt, sand and mud. The old town, which dates back from the 12th century, is built entirely from Kashif. It's built on a rocky outcrop and had city walls and doors that were closed at night. It's largely in ruins now, but the interesting thing about Charlie is the ruins are magnificent, and I believe that it takes good buildings to make good ruins. So let's have a look at that. See, Kashif starts to go over time, this is old Kashif, into a kind of paste. And that's from the drop in temperature in winter and the water in the atmosphere. Gradually over time, it becomes a kind of paste. It's very interesting. See how the outer layer is very pasty. That's from condensation. You can see the kind of salty content there. This is an old wall. See, we're quite high up on this rocky outcrop. This is the urban spread. This is kind of modern sea. We're looking towards the west. That's the West Lake. Okay, let's look at the actual material. Here's a sample, and you can see the crystalline inner core, and then the kind of clay and sand that's gathered around it. So this is the main building block of Kashif. It comes in quite large sizes. This is a small piece. And the mud has a lot of salt content, and the crystalline effect in the mud plus the actual block forms a kind of bond, and that's what makes it quite strong. In the construction method, the walls are held in place by the palm trunks, which are cut on longitudinal sections and used as beams to hold the walls together. Also, sometimes on corners, pieces of olive wood are used to strengthen the corner element, because that is the weak area of the construction. And this is kind of what led me to see that curves in Kashif building kind of work better. So to avoid as much as possible corners. Okay, so let's look at the landscape that we're in. To the north and the west, we have the Daffa Plateau. You can see some of the rocky outcrops there, which go right into the desert. And to the south, we have the Great Sand Sea, which stretches right into Libya. Now, we're approximately 17 meters below, so there's four quite large salt lakes here, which is where the Kashif is basically mined from. And many natural springs, because we're part of the Great Sandstone Aquifer that runs in this part of North Africa. So there's an abundance of fresh water here. So the two things that made Siwa settled was the fresh water and the salt, because of course before refrigeration, salt was essential for caravans on the trade routes. Okay, this is a photograph of the East Lake, where currently most of the salt is being harvested. And you can see a pile of it there in the middle distance. Here we have Kashif with mud on the edge of the East Lake. This is some Kashif just harvested from the ground on the perimeter of town. You do get pockets of Kashif all around Siwa, because of course once the lakes were much, much bigger. And in fact, this whole area was once part of a huge shallow sea. Let's now look at Kashif in construction. There's two buildings here. One is the first building that I did, which is quite traditional in its plan. And then the second building, which is a curve, which I did in 2014. So we'll look at these two buildings in construction, and I'll talk through the slides. So this is the beginning of the first layer of Kashif, sitting upon the sandstone foundation. You see one completed layer. Here's the main builder sitting on top of the wall. You can clearly see the layer that's being added. and the materials are kind of thrown up to him.
Hiya, 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 hiya. وش الواد؟ شايلة معاك. يا ريتني شجعت جوي بعوني نمشي حدا سوق النساء يشروني. حب احكي هيا هيا ودي نمشي حدا سوق وش الورد؟ هيا حماد. هيا هيا ها حبة احكي حبة ها ها دفع لا ها ها جاع جاع ها هيا حبة هيا
The sandstone foundations filled with the interiors filled with sand. This will be leveled out. It creates a kind of raft that the building then sits. Here's the sand leveled out into the voids between the foundation walls. The sandstone comes from a nearby quarry, about 1 kilometre from this site. And the Kashif walls are built on top of the sandstone walls. The Kashif in the foreground and the mud surrounding where the Kashif walls are being built up. This just highlights the layers. Here we see the roof beams going on. They'll be kashifed into place. Here we see the palm beams being put into place. You see they're cut on the longitudinal section. This is showing the top of the roof. You can see the curved part of the palm beam is facing upwards. That's filled with fibres from the palm tree and then covered in mud. You can see the one in the middle distance covered in mud. Here's the roof having its final coating of mud. And there's several layers that go on. The first layer is mixed with little bits of straw called tibbin. And this, the parapet wall is getting covered and the floor. And here you see a layer, well, 2 layers of live lime that's been put on the roof because we're getting a bit more rain in recent years. And the slight pink quality is brick dust that was put into the mix. Okay, this is going to be a quick spin around the building. So the second stage of this building was made of mud brick. So we had to make 18,000 mud brick, and that would create a second bedroom and the enclosing walls, which then created an inner courtyard. And we have the sun-baked brick factory. I call these my bars of gold. So here's the bricks. There's an extra bedroom, and then there's the enclosing walls with a front porch. And this brick section creates an inner courtyard in the center of the building. And then to the north is a small kind of internal garden. And this is how it looks today. The brickwork has all been rendered with mud plaster. You can see the carved sheave texture on that corner. And then in the distance, you can just see the moon building. Here you can see the foundations drawn in the sand with lime. And this is a guideline for the builders to lay the foundation stones. This is the completed sandstone foundation walls. The voids will be filled with sand. The materials will be laid on it, so it will be filled with sand and mud. So here we see the first layer of kashif. And you can see it goes right round the building. So this is the south facade, so you can really see the curve now. This is the inside of the north wall. And you see there's 3 large windows there because this room is going to be my studio, and so I'll get very good northern light. Okay, this is the beginning of the stair wall. This is a vaulted construction, and I've used a pattern of red and white bricks that I actually saw down south near El Minya in Egypt. And I was staying in one of the small villages, and I noticed that for the village walls, they used the leftover red and white brick with mud. And suddenly it started to look kind of beautiful. You see the stairs now and the outside retaining wall. And you can just see a little opening there. That's for storage. There's 2 openings on this side and 2 larger openings internally, which became a kind of pantry. So there we have the completed stair wall. Obviously the stairs are behind it, and now you can really see the curve of the kashif and 2 storage spaces. Here, this is the kind of widest view of the north curve, and you just see the stair working round. So this is the north elevation with the walls around the north terrace. So this is how it looks now. Here you can see a layer of kashif going on, and also one of the interior partition walls, which are in the same red and white brick pattern as the retaining wall on the stair. Here we see the olive beams going on. These are very kind of gnarled and unusual shapes, but olive wood is very, very strong. And here's the palm ceiling seen from the interior above, sitting on top of the olive beams. And here's the plasterer having applied the gypsum to the ceiling, and it really kind of gives the gnarled shape its form. I used the gypsum because I wanted to get as much light as possible into the interior. This is the entrance on the north terrace. You can see the mud plaster around the doors and windows, and also the sandstone floor, which continues throughout the building. So this is an extra bedroom, and now you clearly see the partition walls and the interior sandstone flooring. And I used mud and straw instead of cement in that flooring as well. It gives it a softer feel. This is the workshop room with the gypsum on the ceiling and on the north wall and the west wall. So this is the live lime being laid on the roof to waterproof it. This is the finish of the lime on the roof. I just want to add that everything in the construction of these buildings comes from the landscape and how it absolutely suits this environment and climate. You know, in the hot summer months, you can live without air conditioning, and in the colder winter months, it's warm enough to be comfortable. So it absolutely is ultimately practical.
Well, that was, I think, some of the most beautiful buildings we've seen. Absolutely amazing. There are a few questions. We're not entirely sure whether Fiona's going to be available or not. So we'll leave those maybe for a little while and see if she turns up. I particularly liked the picture of the photo of the all of the blocks lying out to dry, because I've got a similar photograph. It's behind me, but you can't see it, of a council housing estate in East Anglia in the 1920s. Very similar photo, so fantastic.